Hi guys, AzureAce and welcome back to another Danganronpa 3 Future Arc episode discussion. In the last episode we were introduced to our Future Foundation cast as they were all having a meeting to decide Naegi's fate for aiding the remnants of despair in Danganronpa 2. However, everything drops on its head as the building is attacked and they are sent to sleep by a ball of sleeping gas. They wake up and the infamous Monokuma appears on the monitor before them, telling them that they are to endure yet another killing game before everyone looks up at the ceiling to see our first victim of the season, Chisa Yukizome, hanging from the chandelier as we come to episode 2 entitled Hang the Witch. We get into the episode as we see Munakata simply telling Naegi if he loves Hope so much, if he doesn't want a world of despair, he should just kill himself where he stands, whereupon we get the opening. So I'm actually thinking they're going to play a small segment of each episode, then play the opening like a kind of prologue type thing. One thing I want to point out is the opening, it's changed. All the death scenes seem a lot more gruesome looking in the opening than what it was in the first episode. And it looks like there's more petals or something falling with the characters as we get the ominous count, remaining survivors 15 people. As we get into the actual episode, we're treated to a little 8-bit game called Monokuma Hunter. In this killing game, like always, there are rules and I will read them word for word like Monokuma said it. So, rule number 1, the time limit. When the time on your bangle runs out, you will all be injected with a sleeping drug. Rule number 2, the attacker. While you're asleep, one attacker will wake up. The attacker will be given a time limit within which to kill exactly one person. So basically, there's a traitor. And then he goes on to say that they must identify the killer and then kill the traitor, and if they do so, if no one dies once the time limit is down to 0, they will win this killing game. However, there is more. This is one of the most important rules and it plays heavily into this episode. Rule number 3, forbidden actions. Look at your bangles, each of you has a single action that you are not allowed to perform. Perform that action and your bangle will administer a lethal dose of poison. And then he proceeds to give an example of a forbidden action where he is not allowed to laugh out loud, where he then laughs, turns purple and explodes. He also said that if you try to rip off your bangle, it will still inject the poison. And surprise surprise, this killing game, like with the first one, is being broadcast to the entire world to fill everyone with despair by making the Hopes kill each other. We actually get the return of Usami, which is really nice. If you didn't know, Usami is actually a character from Danganronpa 2 who was an AI in the game. She's on the screen that is being used by Miaya, where Kirigiri confirms that Miaya is actually one of the lead developers behind the Neo World program. Usami says that she won't let Monokuma hack into the system, where Monokuma then switches screens and turns Usami into Monami before disappearing, leaving the whole gang wondering what in the world is going on. Sakakura and Gozu are grieving slightly over Chisa, with Gozu respectively laying his jacket on top of her, where something actually very interesting happens. Kirigiri seems to have found something. She goes up and feels the door for some reason, but doesn't tell anyone. Could that be a forbidden action? If she finds a clue she isn't allowed to tell anyone? That would limit her godlike detective skills immensely, but Monami or Miaya or whoever you prefer to call her can't access the internet, can't access her phone, can't get to the outside world. Asahina kind of pokes fun at the Future Foundation, saying their security is pretty bad. However, Monami replies saying that they were perfectly prepared for a hack from the outside, however not so much from one from the inside, confirming the fact evermore that there is indeed a traitor in their midst. Bandai goes around and then comes back saying all the windows and elevators have in fact been blocked, meaning there's no way out. Sakakura says they have to weed out and kill the traitor, with Naegi obviously refuting it. Sakakura begins to be kinda pushy towards Naegi and Asahina also refutes, but then Sakakura goes towards her and it zooms in on her bangle, so possibly Asahina's forbidden action is something like not allowed to scream or something along those lines. Ryota gets involved and then Sakakura agrees with him, only to knee him in the gut, and this is where the entire episode starts to go downhill as we hear a little jingle and we see Bandai holding his chest and we see him put his hand on Sakakura's shoulder, as well as we see his forbidden action, which is not allowed to witness violence towards participants, as Bandai starts to turn purple and he starts bleeding out of his eye. And that's right everyone, we have our second victim. Daisaku Bandai falls at the hands of the killing game. Kimura immediately runs over to him and tries to pour some sort of antidote into his mouth, however it does not work. It is confirmed Bandai is now dead. Kirigiri suggests they all look at their forbidden actions and tell everyone, but no one does. Munakata decides on a plan and tells everyone to just point at the person who they think is the traitor and then they can kill them. And obviously the majority of the party point at Naegi. Kizakura actually points at Miyaya for some reason. He says that it's just a hunch, which is rather interesting. Maybe that will play into the future. We get to the prologue of the episode that we got at the start as Munakata tells Naegi to kill himself. Naegi obviously doesn't want to kill himself, so Sakakura pulls out a knife and lunges at Naegi. However, Gozu steps in and grabs the knife so hard that it snaps in two because of his sheer strength. Munakata pulls out his katana, and then smoke fills the room as Kirigiri bursts a fire extinguisher to let Naegi and Asahina get out of the room. Sakakura tries to chase them, however Gozu gets in the way again and pushes them back. We cut to see Asahina and Naegi in the hallway, and Asahina is telling Naegi to hurry up. However, Naegi reveals his forbidden action, which is that he is not allowed to run in the hallway. So we then get this hilarious scene with Asahina taking Naegi on her back and running with them. They're in a hallway and the floor starts shaking as Gozu bursts out from behind a wall, with Munakata appearing. Gozu picks up a mace of some sort and begins fighting with Munakata, saying that killing your allies will only create despair, not hope. Miyaya also appears and tells Asahina and Naegi to go with her. Asahina picks up a fire extinguisher but it doesn't work, so she throws it at Munakata. Then Gozu just casually elbow drops the floor and breaks the entire ground beneath him. That's crazy. It really just reminds you of Sakura back in Danganronpa 1. They start running with Gozu carrying Naegi on his back, but Munakata throws his sword at Naegi, but it is saved by Naegi, luckily closing the door just as it's about to hit him. Munakata looks down at his wrist and doesn't take his sword back, so maybe his forbidden action is something like can't pick up sword or not allowed to touch doors or something of that nature. Once Gozu, Asahina and Naegi get away, Miyaya appears. Asahina tries to pat Miyaya's head, however she moves her head, leading me to believe that her forbidden action is something like cannot be touched. We switch to see Ruruka and Sonosuke walking in the corridor. They emphasise that they're holding hands, so maybe they need to be with or have physical contact with someone at all times. We switch again back to Gozu, Miyaya, Asahina and Naegi, with Gozu barricading a door with some lockers. Naegi gives this huge speech to Asahina about how she shouldn't be scared because he and Kirigiri are there and know each other this time, trying to cheer her up. Gozu then goes on this whole speech about how Naegi is the Future Foundation's hope. We cut to Munakata, who has finally been found by Sakakura, who picks up his sword for him. We cut back again to Naegi and the group, and we hear a little jingle go off, meaning time's up, and we will find out who our next victim is. We see Naegi wake up, he moves his hand and it has blood on it, and I think you guys already know what this means. He turns and looks as we get the shaky cam as we see our next victim. Ali Asahina is lying on the ground with a knife through her stomach and a pool of blood around her as the episode ends there. My overall judgments for this episode, my god, that went from 0 to 100 very, very fast. Started off with Bandai's death, then everything went to just hell with Munakata and Sakakura started attacking everyone. Then we got that horrible scene with Asahina being our third victim of this killing game. I'm so sad, man. Asahina was one of my favourite characters from the first game, so it pains me so much and hits me emotionally now that she's gone. This opens up the floodgates though. No one is safe now. I thought that Asahina, Kirigiri, Hagakure and Naegi would have some form of plot armour, so that they would at the very least be killed off later in the season. But 2 episodes in, seriously Kodaka, he's killing off all the likeable characters. First Chisa, then Bandai, now the best bae Asahina. But one thing I noticed, and many others have noticed this too, and it's a very peculiar detail. In the opening, Asahina is being stabbed as her death, and Bandai looks like he's either being drowned or poisoned. It's hard to tell at this point which one it is. Their deaths line up perfectly with the opening. However, Chisa's doesn't. In the anime, she's killed by being stabbed in the heart. However, in the opening, she has her wrist slit open. So that's just an interesting note for you to have in your head. Maybe we'll see others that line up with the opening in the future too. The animation was still absolutely stunning in this episode, although I'm confused as to why the blood is red in the future arc and pink in the despair arc. That's weird. It may be to preserve the rating, because if you played Danganronpa 2, you know it's going to be even worse than this in terms of like death and blood and things like that, because it's going to go south so damn quickly you're not even going to notice it in the despair arc. It also seems like Masafumi Takada is composing the music, who is actually the person who did the soundtracks for 1 and 2, and I honestly thought they would bring someone in different instead of Takada, just to kind of mess with the style of music because of how the theme has changed. He used a couple of old tracks like the 8-bit Clash Trial discussion music, which is nice. One final thing I want to say is that it seems like the characters are all splitting off into their own separate groups now, like Naegi, Miyaya and Gozu, Sakakura and Monakata, Sonosuke and Ruruka, and Kirigiri, Tengen and Ryota, which I didn't actually mention in this episode, I kind of forgot. However, we don't know where Kimura and Kizakura are right now. They weren't seen at all after all the commotion with Sakakura, Munakata and Gozu. The anime is very much heating up now, and I can't wait to get further into it. But now, with my overall judgments out of the way, it's time to get into the suspect segment, where I discuss clues and hints that we have been given in all the episodes up until now that may or may not incriminate one of our characters, then try to balance it if I feel that I have evidence to suggest that they are not the prime suspect. There is much more to go off of in this episode for the suspect segment. My prime suspect for episode 2 is... Kyosuke Munakata. Yes, that is right. Kyosuke Munakata is my prime suspect for this episode for an abundant amount of reasons, so let's get into my argument. First of all, it's painfully obvious to see that he is trying to rile up unrest within the group, trying to make everyone suspect each other. Plus there's also the fact that he was the one that constructed the building and has it under his control. In the Despair Arc episode 1, after we see Munakata, Kizakura does tell Tengen, who at the time was the principal of Hope's Peak Academy, not to let his power fall under him and let someone take over. Could he be referring to Munakata? There's also the fact that he's trying to kill his own allies. Surely a Hope would never do something like that.
That's where you're wrong!
However, there is the fact that the general consensus is that Munakata's forbidden action is that he cannot touch or open doors, meaning he couldn't go after Gozu, Naegi, Asahina and Miyaya, which means he shouldn't know where they would have gone and proceed to fell Asahina at his own hands. Believe me guys, this is not going to be the last time you see Munakata in the suspect segment, not by a long shot. But nevertheless, that's all for today guys. I've been AzureAce. If you guys like this video, please drop a like, comment your thoughts, share this amongst your friends and subscribe to join the Azure Army today. Stay awesome guys, thank you.